This is the BEM file editor. It is an enhanced cross-platform editor for Energy Plus input files. This will go over a little bit of preliminaries, but also the editor tab and simulating in the BEM file editor. Since this is an open source project, it's good practice for me to alert you to where to get the code and also what license it is under. That information can be found underneath the help menu. So in here we have BEM file editor licenses. I can click that. There's also the GitHub repository, so I'm going to go directly to the GitHub repository. I already have that queued up, so let me just go ahead and open that window. So this is the GitHub repository, and its main purpose really is there's a brief README down here at the bottom, and its real purpose is to have the code publicly available. If you're looking for more information, that's going to be on the website. So it has other things, about. It has the licenses, downloads, things like that. So the BEM file editor code is licensed under a BSD 3-clause license, and you can see that file yourself. For some context, the Energy Plus license is actually a modified BSD 3-clause license. So if you're using Energy Plus in a legal fashion right now, then chances are doing the same thing, you'll be able to use this software. It's actually a very permissive license. It's you can use it for commercial purposes or non-commercial. You really only have to worry, I would say, if you start modifying the code and distributing it. One more thing is that the logo that I use, this thing up here, BEM Instructionals logo, it's licensed under Creative Commons, Attribution Share Alike 4.0 International License. And then the user interface is called PySide, in this case PySide 6, and it's using a GNU Lesser General Public License version 3. The video being shown right now is for version 1.1.0 of the BEM file editor. It's cross-platform, so there's installers for Windows 11, macOS Sequoia, and also Ubuntu 24.02 long-term service. If for some reason you don't want to use an installer, or you just want to run the code natively, you can actually download the code yourself and run it. So the one I'm displaying right here is actually installed, and you can see that here's the little icon I have on Windows from installing it. But if that's a problem for you and you just want to run it using Python in your terminal, you can download the code essentially right here. So not a whole lot of files. So if you download that, you'll end up with a file like this. Let me move it over. So here's the zip file that I downloaded, and then here's the zip file extracted. So if I go ahead and open that up, then there's not that many things in here, and I'm just going to open a command prompt on Windows. All right. There are a few things you need. You do need the latest version of Python. So as of this video, that should be Python 3.13. So just showing you I have that. All right. You also need to install PySide 6. So pip install PySide 6. And I already have it, so it's just going to say that it's there. And then I can just do Python, and I can run main.py. And that should open up another window. Takes a little while. It is slower because it isn't optimized. The installer didn't go through and optimize the code. But there it is. Little different size. But it's the same thing that you would get as running the installer. One last thing before moving on. I do want to give a shout out to the project that inspired this. So I think it was about 5 years ago. This person, Matt Iron, actually made a very similar project, and it also used PySide. It's just it hasn't been maintained for 5 years. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to resurrect the project and get it up and running again, but just wanted to acknowledge that this was here. Now that I have all these open source obligations out of the way, let's go ahead and show how to use the BEM file editor and all of its features. If this is your very first time using the BEM file editor, what you want to do first is actually specify the font. Especially if you have a high resolution display, the default font size can be quite small. So to do that, we're going into View, Application Settings. And here we have 3 things we can change. So first thing, we can change the font point size, so increasing numbers makes larger text. Then we can change the font family, so depending on your operating system and what's available, the default font that's supplied can be not very good looking. So for me, I picked Arial, and that's the general font that's used pretty much everywhere. This last font I picked, it's a console font, so it's going to show up in the Energy Plus console in particular, and it's a constant character width font is what I picked. So right, even though L is typically a thinner letter and so is I, those 2 letters take up the same space as an M or the capital F. They're all constant character width, and that name is Courier. It'll change a little bit in name based on what your operating system is. You can get a preview of what they'll look like before you go. So if I change this to 16, you can see they got quite a bit bigger, and maybe that's better for your eyes and also better for your screen. I'm not going to change it for mine. And let's say you get that done, you apply the changes. You'll have to restart if it changes because of the way the operating system renders the window. But let's say you've done that, and now you're back and you have a nice looking font, and it's also a nice size. The next thing to do is pick what version of Energy Plus you're going to be reading in for the IDF files. So the IDF editor that comes with an Energy Plus installation only works for one version of Energy Plus. So right, there's a bunch of different versions here. The BEM file editor actually contains a whole bunch of versions, and I went back 2 or 3 years or so to different versions. So you pick this now because there's no IDF loaded. Once you load an IDF, you won't be able to change this because you can't just change the version of the IDF. There can be different objects, they can have different fields, they can be in different orders. Things change between versions, so you have to pick this before you start. So I'm going to currently leave it at 25.1. The next thing to do is actually open a file. I'm going to open up a file I already have. So this is one of the DOE prototype models. It's the small office. And actually this one is not the correct version. So I'm going to try and open it with 25.1, but this is a 24.2 version IDF. I'm going to open it and I'm going to get a warning. And it says, you tried to open a 24.2 object, the version object doesn't agree with the version you have in your drop-down box. And it's going to try and read it anyway, but in this case I don't think there's an error, but you really do need to change this. So we're going to go back, we're going to file, unload IDF, and now I'm going to change to the correct version, 24.2. This will stay over time every time you open it. Now I'm going to open again and I won't get an error. Notice that now we've opened an IDF file, we've loaded it into the BEM file editor. This is no longer changeable. All right, so we're stuck at 24.2 because we opened this file as a 24.2 Energy Plus version IDF file. If you do need to upgrade or change the versions on a file, the best way to do that is to use the IDF version update tool, and that comes with the Energy Plus installation files. At a high level, there's a bunch of different sections inside of the user interface, and they're all connected by slidable dividers. So for instance, there's a slider here. If you don't want to view this bottom one right now, we can just get rid of it entirely. And so you'll have more real estate for whatever you're viewing up in this one. There's a classes tree view. Probably when you first open this, the dividers aren't going to be in very convenient places, but it will remember from the next time you use it. So for instance, this one might be really scrunched. You might have to move it over. Things like that. And then here as well, we have a divider we can move. Now to focus on the classes tree. So this is just a way to navigate into the different classes that you have. There's this hide empty classes. That's probably one of the most useful buttons. So I'm going to do hide empty classes. So you'll notice that the count, the ones that didn't have any count in them, had 0 objects that were created. And so now I only have to scroll through the objects that I have created, not all these empty classes. That's hide and show empty classes is also shown inside of this menu here, view hide empty classes. Uses Control-L as the shortcut. If you want to populate this field with the object information, so it won't work if you click this, and to that in a moment here, but if I click simulation control, that row gets highlighted as gray, and now I have the simulation control object. Here's a description of that object in general, but it also has a description of particular fields. If I want to actually show that in either the top or bottom table view, then I'm going to have to click on that. You can't display the same object in both of them, so for instance, the simulation control is already shown in the bottom divider. If I click this, it's not going to do anything, but right, I could click this. So I can't show the same thing in 2 places. So here you probably guessed now what top and bottom do. So the top one is going to be the top object display table. The bottom one is going to be the bottom object display table. It's really nice to have these 2 tables, especially when you're connecting objects together by their node names, because you can have one object type in the top table and another object type in the bottom table, and you can take, okay, this is the outlet node, I'm going to copy that, put it in the inlet node, so on and so forth. Then again, if you want more real estate, you can hide one of them. Next, we have all this stuff at the top of the classes tree. So sometimes, even though I've hidden the empty classes, there's still quite a lot of classes. So let's say I want to find the building surface detail classes, so I could type in BUI. So this is not case sensitive. And here, right, looks like building was also there, but also building surface detailed, the one that I was actually looking for. Let's go ahead and display that on the top. And there we have it, it's displayed. I can also choose to filter objects by field text. So let's say, for instance, I'm looking for a particular floor building surface detailed object. So I could type in floor. And now it's only showing all the building surface detailed objects that have floor somewhere in one of their fields. So it would actually match to both. See, this has underscore floor, this has capital floor. It would match both of them, but it's all floors now. And actually, this one, right, it's a ceiling here, but there's going to be floor somewhere around here. Let's see. There it is, attic floor. All right, so do keep that in mind. It's going to be in at least one of the fields, even though this is a ceiling. The case sensitive boxes and also the match entire field text, that makes more sense. So for instance, in this one, if I do floor, it should cancel out, should filter out this ceiling, right? And now I really only have floor, and it's going to pretty confidently only pick the building surface objects that have this surface type input as exactly floor. If I went and did case sensitive, I actually get rid of everything, but then if I put in capital floor, then I have them back. All right, so enough about that. Moving on to the next piece. So these user interface components up here, they allowed you to filter and find certain things fairly easily, but not a very good way to actually alter the text in a nice way. So under there, you can actually go, there's an edit, and there's a find replace field text. And let me go ahead and take that window. Let's go back. What if I want to change the name of a construction everywhere, right? So let's say I want to change construction name int wall to interior wall. So I can do int underscore wall, and I'm going to go ahead and click find next. And it says there's 17 matches. So let's just go ahead and make sure that none of them are fitting something different. So this orange here is highlighting the cell that it found it in. So let's see, interior wall. Looks like it's all interior wall. Perfect. All right. So let's say I want to change int wall to something more descriptive, interior wall. Then I can go ahead and replace, and I can either click that a few times. So under here, it's saying that these are wrong because I changed the construction name. So this is signifying that this is an invalid field. This object doesn't exist, but that's because I actually changed the construction name. If I start changing those, then they're going to go back to valid cells. And I'm going to go ahead and do replace all. And there we go, now it's done them all. There's nothing else to find, there's 0 matches. So this is a very nice find replace operation. So that pretty much takes care of the classes tree GUI section, and also it took care of find replace. One more thing that you might want to do, so right, the default in Energy Plus is to use SI units, and that's actually how the IDF files are saved. They're always saved in SI units. But it would be a real pain if you had to convert from imperial units to SI all the time. So there's a way to do that. You can view it as IP units, and then you can put in the numbers directly. Right, so one more thing, view IP versus SI. I'm going to go back to SI because it looks a little nicer. The next big section is the undo redo section. So you can either click it. So on this one, it's supposed to be the lowest one here. It tells you when you changed it, but it's the most recent change. So if I do undo, it's going to move this one down 1, and so on. But you can't actually see what's changing, right? So if you have a quick undo, then that will work. But what if I want to preview what's actually going to change? All right, so I did the best I could on this. It's, a little confusing to do it. So let's say I'm focused solely on undo. It's a little confusing to have all these fields here for both undo and redo operations. So I'm just going to slide this down. And now I'm only concerned about undo. So if I undo an operation, I have the current state of the object that will change when I click undo, and then I have the state of that object after I click undo. So right now there's an object, it has construction name interior wall, and if I click undo, the interior wall will change to int underscore wall. Right, and if I do that, I click undo, then it changes it into the redo, and I can keep doing that. And let's go all the way back. Let's say I didn't really want to change that. Then I have undo. My last one here is when I change the construction object name from int wall to interior wall. So one more undo, and I'm good, right? And there's nothing left here because I've gone all the way back to the beginning of the file. Then one thing though, what if I wanted to redo it? Let's say redo, so now I have, let me just look at redo, the current state. It's going to change the int wall name of the construction object to interior wall. So I can redo that. Let's say I do that a few times. And now let's say I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and exit. So one thing to keep in mind, if I add another change, let's say I change this to 5, then my redo history past that point got erased because I essentially went back halfway in time, I made a new change, and now I have new stuff. But now if I go ahead and click the undo redo preview, and I'm going to do an undo, there, right? So let me get that back to the right size. Right, I don't want 5, I actually want 4. I can undo again, so on and so forth. And I do want to go all the way back to the beginning because I don't have to go through those changes. So that kind of sums up the undo redo stuff. And in the middle here, it does tell you whether or not the thing has been saved. So if I do redo, I have unsaved IDF changes. I can go ahead and save those. And now it says, okay, now I've got the state from the drive, but I still have the ability to undo. So I know that this is going to cause a problem because I only changed some of the construction names, not the others. So I'm going to go ahead and undo those again. I have unsaved changes because it's different from what's on the disk. And I can go ahead, file, save again, comes back. So that pretty much sums up the undo redo behavior. For a little more information on how these table cells work, I can modify them directly. So I can make this, 444. I'm going to go ahead and undo that because it's probably not 444 meters long. But I could also type in anything else. I could type in ABC. And now I've got this cell highlighted orange because there's a very good chance that this is an invalid input for this cell. Right? It's supposed to be a number, and I typed in ABC. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And then one thing to watch out for, I think this is on schedule material no mass. Is that one? Where's one of those? Okay, here we go. So for some fields, the Energy Plus simulation engine is case insensitive, but for other fields, it's case sensitive. So even though this is being highlighted orange, it's actually going to run in the Energy Plus executable just fine because it considers capital fraction and lowercase fraction to refer to the same object. And so this really is telling you that you're have a difference in the capitalization. So if I change this to fraction, it's going to be just fine, but it will complain about it. The reason I left it this way is it was just too difficult to try and get things to work out correctly for when fields were case insensitive versus case sensitive. So I just left it as is. Then the next thing is, okay, well, how do you actually know what is valid? So there's a few ways to do that. So on fraction, I can right click. So there's an option for copy paste, but also this field choices. It's going to appear when you right click on some of the cells and some of the objects. And it actually gives you a bunch of valid choices. And you can filter it if you want. So if I do ON, then that goes to fraction, on, off, and control type. All have ON in them. And I can type fraction if I want. So I can double click. That's going to put fraction in that field. If I want, I can also do any text I want to enter. That schedule type doesn't exist, so it's not going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and undo it. There you have it. Let's see. In other cases, there's different ones. So this one, it's a field choices. Field choices also exist on nodes. So let me find an object that has a node in it. Here we go. This should have one. So again, this one, it's just a little bit different. So I can find always on, it's just all capitalized where it's actually defined. But in here I have auto size. So the default here is, you can choose auto size, and you can also choose the minimum value. Right, and let me see, I think in simulation control, let's go to building. Some of them only have a finite number of options, so in this case it's using full interior and exterior, but you have 5 or 6 different options here you can use. There's also a default option. And let's go. I actually didn't find the node I was looking for. Let's see. That'll work. So it has these inlet outlet nodes. I can right click on this, get to field choices, and now I have a whole bunch of nodes that exist elsewhere within the IDF that I can use. And again, I can filter them to make it a little easier, so I know this is going to be maybe zone 1. But yeah, right, so right-clicking on a cell can give you some more options. Let's see, I think there's going to be a field, maybe in building. Right, so this one is a default, but it also has a maximum allowed value. A few buttons that we haven't done yet are these new, delete, copy, paste. So let me go ahead and show new first. I'm going to show all the empty classes. Let's go to performance trade-offs. There's no objects in here, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. When I create a new one, it has the default fields that show up when you create a new object. And it also has changed, right? That got added into the undo redo history. Let's go ahead and look at that. So this one looks a little different. Right, so the current state of the object, I just made it exist. It's object 1. And when I go backwards, when I undo, that object won't exist anymore, so it's just blank. All right, so if I do undo, then it's gone and I have some other stuff. Let's say I want to redo that one. Then, right, the current state of the object, it doesn't exist, but I can redo the new operation and it will recreate that object for me. All right. Let's see, so new, delete. So let's go to something with a few more fields. All right, here we go, 10. This one, the top row here is a little bit special. So if you want to delete something, you do have to use the top row. So I could delete object 2. And that got added to the undo history. I could delete, using control, several different objects. Delete those. And then I can also use shift to select them all. So delete. But I would like those back. So again, undo, redo, preview. If I undo my operation, I'm going to go from nothing existing to those objects existing again. I'm undoing the delete. So let's just view that over here. Right, they came back. Then I also deleted some other ones. I deleted objects 3, 5, 6, and 8. So I can undo that. I also deleted object 2. And that's that one. All right. Then I can copy objects. So to do that, right, if I try to copy with a different row selected, it's going to give me a warning. Just wants to use the top row, just the way the table works. So if I want to copy these 5-ish objects, I can copy them, then I can paste. And now I have duplicates of those objects. And again, if I go to undo, redo, preview, I do undo. These objects exist because I just pasted them, but I'm essentially unpasting them so they won't exist anymore, and they're gone. So that kind of wraps up all the stuff that we're seeing right here. But one thing I haven't gone over is what is the Energy Plus Console tab, but also what are these other 4 tabs here. And so built into the BEM file editor is a way to actually simulate the IDF you're currently working on. All right, and one thing to note is that when you do simulate, it will save the file to its current state and overwrite whatever is on the disk. So just keep that in mind. It won't matter right now because we're going to use the file that is saved to the disk, but it will overwrite it. So in order to simulate, we're going to go to File, Simulate IDF. It's going to give me an error because I don't have an EPW file yet. So I have an IDF file loaded, but I don't have a paired EPW file to actually simulate with. So let's go ahead and pick an EPW file. And I'm going to go ahead and use San Diego. And now I'm going to try again. There's also a shortcut for this, so I'm going to use Shift Space. And it should start a simulation. This is where the Courier constant character with font was used, right? This is typical font that you get inside a terminal. If you want to terminate the process for whatever reason while it's running, you can click this button. I'm not going to do that right now because I want it to finish. The next thing is, okay, where did it actually get the Energy Plus engine to use? Well, right, you've installed that separately from the BEM file editor. And then because we're using Energy Plus 24.2, it's going to use the installation directory for Energy Plus 24.2. In this case, it's populated with the defaults. So on Windows, the default location is C, and then Energy Plus 24-2-0. And then it looks in there for the energyplus.exe file, and it gives as command line arguments the path to the IDF file and the path to the EPW file, and then it simulates. All right, so that's nice that you can simulate within here. And then these files are actually files associated with the IDF or its output files. So this kind of code here, this less than IDF file greater than .idf, that's going to refer to the name of the IDF file you currently have loaded. It's kind of, replace less than IDF file greater than with whatever name you're using. So this is actually the raw IDF file that we simulated with. If for whatever reason you want to view that, then you can. You can also search it. So let's go with energy. So it looks like that's the first text that appears as energy. You keep going. When you hit enter, it only goes forward, but if I want to go backwards, then I can go backward direction, and then it starts going backwards. The next one that you commonly view is the e+out.er file. So again, if you want to search that, you can. Keep in mind that if you search, let's see, find, looks like I didn't find, oh, no matches for that. Let's try energy. So it looks like I found 14, right? But if you want to go backwards, then that's what you have to do to get there. So those are both text files. But the EIO file is actually written more like a CSV. So this one is actually being displayed as a CSV file. And that's also specified in the application settings because it's rendering it as a CSV. And if you want, you can add more stuff in here. You know, E+, I don't know, whatever file output that you want to view. It has a search, so let me try energy. So I'm going to find, there's two matches. It looks like the cell it got was right there. If I find again, then it gets to right here. So apparently that one, it shows the cell contents right here. And so it's a standard rated energy factor. And if I open this up, yeah, that is the cell contents. There's only two matches. If I do find again, it's not going to go anywhere. But if I go backwards direction, then it did. And it looks like one of the cells at the top called energy plus, right? That has energy in it. So it's finding this stuff. Then another one is a special case. So if we go to view application settings, there is an HTML file that's rendered as kind of a web page. And so for that one, energy plus tbl.htm, that's rendered as an HTML file, and it's got a bunch of metrics for how things, you know, how much energy you used, how much energy per square foot, the type of energy you used, possibly even the equipment that used it, different sections. Pretty useful file. You can change the files here that are displayed. So for instance, if I wanted to go to view application settings, let's say I want to change the EIO. I don't want to view it as a table. I want to view it as just a raw text file. So I can go ahead and apply the changes. And now I go back to e+iout. So right, this is very difficult to read. It's a CSV file. This one is, right, we've got site ground temperature, building surface. It's got January, February up to December. And then it's got all the different values. Much, much harder to read. So if we go back to view application settings, let's go ahead and put that back. Apply the changes. And here it is again as a table. One last thing is this refresh all displayed files button. This appears in all 4 of them. The reason this exists is really when you output a lot of meters or a lot of variables at a very small time step. So if you're doing a 6-minute time step for a whole year, those CSV files can get very, very large if you output a ton of variables and meters, you know, tens of megabytes. Because of that, it can take a while to even write the file. And so if you feel that this is not up to date, you can also tell from the date it ran that you can refresh it manually. And this one refreshed, but it has the exact same time. But sometimes you will need to refresh it manually. Sometimes it takes quite a while for, I'm not sure if it's Energy Plus or the operating system, but it takes a while for that file to actually get fully saved. Lastly, there's just a few more things to view inside of the application settings. So we went over pretty much everything except these 3. There's a disable update prompt. So if you have a version of the BEM file editor installed that isn't the most recent version, you can get an update every time you open saying, you know, do you want to upgrade? If you want to disable that, you can go ahead and click there. There's also disable checking the IDF was externally modified. So I will go ahead, I'll just go ahead and apply that. So pretty much by doing that, let's see, view, help, here we go. So check for new version, it prevents this window from showing up over and over again. The other thing is the file can be externally modified. So let me go ahead and let's see, I'm going to open this with a text editor. All right, so go ahead and close that, go back to my text editor. So let's say for whatever reason, something somewhere accidentally modified the IDF you're working on while you're working on it in the BEM file editor. So I'm just going to do that by doing Control S. So then I got a warning from the BEM file editor saying, hey, by the way, the IDF file that you're currently modifying, something changed it. And so just letting you know. And then this IDF state from drive is going to change to IDF file changed externally. You probably need to figure out what's going on before you save anything or close this, because the file, might be totally gone. But sometimes it does give false warnings. So one common case for a false warning is if you have a cloud syncing feature. And so a lot of times the cloud syncing feature, it actually won't change the content of a file, but it will change the last modification date associated with the file. And so if that's happening to you, then you can just disable that warning. It won't ever happen. The last one here is the Show Python Console tab. So that's actually if you think you're running into an error that's occurring while you're running the BEM file editor. So if I apply changes there, we're going to get another console showing up. And there it is, the Python console. And here, you do have to manually refresh because this is essentially checking for errors. These are the date times that I've run the BEM file editor. And if I clear it, I can clear it. It's fine, it's an external file. But if there is an error that occurs, there'll be a traceback that should get printed here. And then that would be really useful for me if I have to debug something with the file you're using. All right, sorry that took so long, but there is a lot of features in here, and you only really know about them once you learn about them, but once you know about them, they're easy to use. I hope you enjoy using the BEM file editor, and looking forward to new features. For instance, a geometry building viewer, and also a node connection viewer inside the air loops and water loops and things like that.